In this episode of the Journey to the Baja 1000, we're going to finish up fabricating the spindle for the J10 race truck. You're watching the Journey to the Baja 1000. Watching the build up to this point, and as you can imagine, that a build like this is 95% planning and preparation and about 5% actual fabrication. While we're doing mostly fabrication today, I did want to pause for a second and show you a little bit about what I do to prepare the metal to get it ready to weld. So we're going to look at today how to remove mill scale and what I do. How do I take a part that looks like this, covered with mill scale, which is difficult to remove with a flap disc or a wire wheel or something like that, and end up with a part that looks like this, which is cleaned off and ready to weld. And you'll find that it's actually pretty simple with a couple simple techniques and a few products. One of them is pretty cheap, just white vinegar that you can get from Walmart or any store. And then also my favorite, which I didn't know about before, but this bristle brush by 3M. Let me show you how I use these things and put them to work. So here I am again using the Langmeyer Systems Crossfire Pro CNC plasma cutter, and this thing does an awesome job of cutting out parts, but when they come out, they're not perfect. There's still a couple things that need to be done. You need to take the slag off. You also need to treat the edges with a belt sander or something like that. And then we need to get that mill scale off, that dark stuff that's on top of the metal. Let's take a look at how we do that. So before you start to weld on these plates of metal, you really got to get rid of the mill scale. According to Jody on Welding Tips and Tricks, which I go to all the time, if you want to TIG weld on this, you need bright, shiny metal. And so how do you get down to that? You got to take this mill scale off. You can use an angle grinder with a flap disc, and that will get it off, but you'll find that removes a lot of the material, and it's a lot of work. You'll go through a lot of those flap discs before you get all the stuff off and you're ready to weld on it. Let me show you a better way, and it's going to blow you away how easy it is to get rid of this mill scale. So this is the chemical closet I have right outside of my garage, and in this tub I have just a couple gallons of white vinegar, and I just place the parts in there. I try to make sure they're not lapping over top of each other, otherwise the vinegar won't be able to react with the surface of the metal. And then it gets to work. I'm not a chemist, and I'm just hoping that vinegar and gasoline don't react into some kind of rocket fuel or something like that, but so far it's been safe. After just a couple hours, the vinegar has done its work, and now I can take it out and start washing the parts off with clean water and a brush. Well, this is one of those things I just wouldn't believe unless I was doing it myself. I couldn't believe how the mill scale was just falling off this part as I was scrubbing it with this stainless steel wire brush. Let me give you one word of caution: don't do this in your mom's sink, because this stuff gets nasty, and whatever gets on, it is not coming off forever. So just make sure you have it in a bucket or somewhere where you can rinse it and you're not going to destroy something in your house. So here's a product that I didn't know existed, and if you do any kind of metal work, this tool belongs in your shop. It is the Bristle Brush by 3M. I'm putting a link for it in the description below if you want to get it from Amazon. Now it's about $28. That's an expensive part to go in your tool. But just let me say, compared to the flap discs I have, this thing must last 20 times as long. I've been through plates of metal like crazy, and I'm not halfway through the bristle brush just yet. I am careful when I'm using it. I try to make sure that the bristles run off of the part and not run into the corner, and I think that preserves the life a little bit, but as you can see, it makes short work of getting the rest of the mill scale off this. And when you look at, again, the process to get the mill scale off, just think about what I did. I took a part, I put it in the vinegar, it did its thing for a couple hours, I didn't touch it, pulled it out of the vinegar, wiped it down with a stainless steel brush for a couple seconds, and then ran it over with this bristle brush, and it is like shiny silver, ready to be welded on. Just an awesome process I didn't know about before, and hopefully you can use it while you're building stuff in your own shop. So the last step to this is to hit the edges with the belt sander. And if it's a part that I'm going to be welding, I'm going to make it square. But if it's a part that I might bump into later on, I'm going to round it off so it's smooth and it doesn't cut somebody.
So one of the limitations that you have with a plasma cutter is that because of the swirl in the cutting gas, it doesn't make holes very well. They end up being a little bit out of round or something like that. And as your consumables get worn out, they get worse. And so you have to go back and treat the hole. And right here, I'm using a reamer that I got off of Amazon. And it didn't work. So I would not get this thing. I think it was like a $50 part. And it might be good for other holes, but since the plasma cutter leaves a hardened surface almost like a weld, the reamer had a hard time cutting through. What works a lot better for this is just a die grinder, and those are a lot cheaper. This thing, I almost blew the bit using it, a $50 bit, making one hole. So just not worth it. So not every tool I use is a winner. So like I said, I'm not a professional welder. I just do what I'm told. And I watch Jody, from his website is Welding Tips and Tricks, and he also has a YouTube channel. And he says if you want to TIG weld and you want to make it look good, you have to have clean, bright, shiny metal. So I'm hitting all the surfaces here with acetone and just a paper towel to clean off all the rest of the oils and residue. You got it. You got to clean everything. Even the welding wire has got to be clean. And you'd be surprised how much oil comes off those things when you run them through a clean paper towel with a little bit of acetone. Well, I love mocking up the clean parts here. What I'm using to hold these two things together is one of the strong hand tools, adjustable magnet squares, and that does a really good job because you can turn the magnet off, move the parts around where you need it to, and then turn the magnet on, and it does a really good job of holding them in place. Again, the link for this will be in my description below. A really good tool. I have a lot of other magnets for welding, and none of them work as well as the other strong hands. So as I'm tacking this piece together, I'm taking care to put tacks on both sides because I know as that weld cools, it's going to pull that piece out of square. So I'll put a couple tacks on this side, I'll spin it around and put tacks on the other side before I put any long welds down to keep that thing square. So as I get to welding here, a couple different things I'm using to weld. I like to use the Miller helmets. I think they work pretty good. They're auto darkening. I'm also using a Weldcraft WP26 or number 26 TIG torch. I'm using a gas lens kit. I'm pretty sure I got from Welding Tips and Tricks. He's got all kinds of cool stuff over there. A 3/32 tungsten. One of the red ones, it's 2%. It starts with a C. I won't even attempt to say the word. It does a good job because now with the 1/4 inch plate, I'm able to dial the TIG welder all the way up to 200 amps, the maximum, and give it full pedal and just blast this without too much heat building up in the TIG torch, and it does a pretty good job. So one of the last things I think about whenever I'm putting welds down like this is I don't want to weld too much at one time because you're just putting a lot of heat into the part. And the two surfaces that you're welding are going to heat up at different rates. They're going to expand at different rates. And then once they cool, your part will start to warp. So I will weld a bit, and then I'll go do something else and let that part cool down. And then I'll come back and weld again to keep the part from warping and distorting too much. Well, there might be better ways to mount a brake caliper and get that thing welded in. But my plan in this case was just to put it in place where I wanted it. I put a couple spacers in to make sure that it was square, and then just weld it right into place where it was.
Well, here's a quick look at the part so far as I've gotten through the welds. Now there are still some things I'm going to be doing. I will still be putting a plate across the top all the way up to about here, and then also a plate across the bottom to go ahead and continue strengthening this thing. I'll have some other gussets inside there, but this gives you a good idea of how it's going to look. I'd say I'm 90% pleased with the welds. I think my TIG welds are getting a little bit better. I really wanted to weld most of the suspension together before I got to the frame, just so I could get more recency on the TIG welder, get a little bit better. So by the time I'm doing the frame, I think it's dialed in. I did use MIG welding a couple times where I just couldn't get in with a TIG weld, and you know, it's gonna be okay. I just hate MIG welding. Sometimes, you know, it's sitting on top. I just never think it looks as good when you hit it with the MIG weld. If I could TIG weld everything, I would do that. It takes more time, but it's just a more quality job. But so far, I'm pretty pleased with this part. So here's the payoff for all that fabrication. I am really happy with the way the spindles went together. There's still a little bit left to do. I still need to put the mounts in for the steering, and we still need to box this thing in and make it a little bit more rigid. But we'll do that after we get the lower and the upper suspension arms made. And we'll start doing that in the next episode of the Journey to the Baja 1000. I hope you learned something today, and you'll think about joining us again on future episodes. Please don't forget to hit the like and subscribe button. We'll see you on the next one. Take care of yourself.